How exactly do you construct a cathedral-like station 20 metres below an area of northwest London? That was the challenge facing a joint venture who is responsible for delivering the new Old Oak Common Superhub, which will link HS2 with the Great Western Main Line and Elizabeth Line. The enormous station will have 14 platforms in total, 6 subterranean platforms for HS2 services, and 8 surface level platforms for what are currently GWR services, Heathrow Express and Elizabeth Line services. There are also talks of Transport for London building an overground station close to Old Oak Common. As many of you know by now, Old Oak Common will now have to act as a terminus for several years before the new Euston station is complete, despite the station never being designed to act as a terminus. Fortunately, however, someone had the foresight to ensure that the track layout allowed trains arriving from the north to use all 6 of the subterranean platforms. This is why the Victoria Road crossover box is so important, as it will house a high-speed crossover which will provide this flexibility. This was more about providing operational flexibility rather than ever assuming that Old Oak Common would act as a terminus, and the designs were locked in before work on Euston was paused. As the crossings are at grade or flat, it does limit capacity somewhat, although this shouldn't be an issue, as HS2 Phase 1 to Handsacre will only be used by around 10 trains per hour in each direction. It is also uncertain whether or not HS2 services from Glasgow, Liverpool and Manchester will begin to operate before Euston is complete. But if services from the north do begin before the new Euston station opens, then the track layout approaching Old Oak Common should have sufficient capacity for the service frequency envisaged. There are important questions, such as would passengers be happy alighting trains at Old Oak Common to then board trains into central London? And will the Elizabeth Line have sufficient capacity even with the 10 new trains which are currently being built? The new units were justified because of growing passenger demand, but their delivery was made all the more important once it was decided that HS2 trains would terminate at Old Oak Common for several years. Having said that, I think it's important to stress that in fact many journeys into central and East London will be much more straightforward by changing for Elizabeth Line services, rather than travelling into Euston to then use the Northern Line to reach Tottenham Court Road or walking to Euston Square. As you can imagine, building an enormous 14-platform station, which has 6 effectively underground platforms, is incredibly challenging. And despite the enormous site being almost a kilometre long, it is in fact quite constrained, as it is sandwiched between the Class 345 depot, North London Line, Great Western Main Line and Old Oak Common Lane. Within this space, BBVS has had to excavate an enormous 850 metre long, 20 metre deep box, and is building a new surface station that will eventually have 8 platforms. It has been over 3 years since I last visited the site, and during my first visit in 2023, excavation of the box was only around 50% complete. I was fortunate to attend the launch of TBM Karen, which began constructing one of the Euston tunnel bores in March this year, but as I explained within that video, the box has for the time being been split into 2 distinct zones, so I could only see a very small area. I was therefore unprepared for how vast the station actually is, and I'm not sure if the footage truly captures the scale. Needless to say, the station is enormous. Considering construction only began in 2021, which started with early site preparations, followed by around 2 years of excavation, it really is impressive that the platforms are now in place, and different rooms, stairs and lift shafts are already starting to take shape. It felt quite strange walking on permanent sets of stairs, having previously relied on temporary steps to enter the box. Some of the rooms won't be accessible by the public and will only be used by members of staff and train crews. The 6 platforms, construction of which was completed in July, were first formed by constructing walls, which are known as inverts. They were formed by pouring concrete into formwork or moulds. 1,946 precast concrete panels were then placed on the inverts to form the platforms, which are made up of 3 islands, each with 2 platform faces. This work was carried out on behalf of BBVS by a specialist concrete basement and superstructure company called Expanded. The distance from the ground slab to the platform edge is currently quite a lot higher than the eventual distance from the rail to the platform. This is because the track and systems contractor will later pour a layer of concrete to bring the height up to specification, and will then install the track slabs on top. Even when the height is raised, the distance from the top of the rail to the platform edge will be higher than the UK standard, as the platforms have been designed to provide step-free access from the train onto the platform, despite the trains being designed to a UK standard rather than low floor height. This does unfortunately mean that only the new HS2 stations will provide step-free access from the platform onto the train, while ramps will be required at all other UK mainline stations north of Birmingham, unless HS2 is ever extended north. In order for passengers to get from the subterranean platforms to the surface and reach all of the surface platforms, BBVS will be installing 53 lifts and 44 escalators, which is a staggering number. But given the size of the station and expected number of passengers, it was critical to ensure that passengers are able to freely move around the station. Many of the lifts will be installed within concrete cores, which is typical, while some lifts will offer 360-degree views of the station. Part of the logistical challenges on site stems from the fact that the joint venture is simultaneously building the HS2 and Great Western Main Line platforms, which individually would be challenging enough. To add to this, sections of the track are also being laid on the site, and the first sections of track and OLE have already been installed. Due to the constrained nature of the site, it is only possible for BBVS to construct 6 of the surface platforms. The 2 remaining platforms cannot be constructed until the Great Western Main Line has been realigned through the station. Realigning the main line will be one of the more disruptive parts of the build, requiring a number of multi-day blockades, the first of which isn't expected to take place until 2029. Some blockades have already taken place, but this was only to carry out early preparatory work and complete electrification of the line between Acton Mainline Station and the West Coast Main Line. This will allow GWML services to be diverted to Euston during the lengthier closures. Before any of this can happen, the joint venture must first build 2 bridges, one over the Central Line and a further bridge over Old Oak Common Lane. The latter will require the full closure of the road once construction gets underway in around 2028. The work taking place at the moment is to divert utilities, which is itself another complicated task. Old Oak Common Lane has in fact been temporarily realigned to the south of the mainline bridge to allow this work to take place. The construction of the new bridge is also being used as an opportunity to increase the clearance so that double-decker buses can pass underneath. This is a crucial part of the wider plan for Old Oak Common, which will become an important multimodal transport hub. BBVS and HS2 Limited are currently finalising plans for the road closure, while the utility works are underway, so the exact phasing of the work isn't yet known, but every effort is being made to complete the utility works first before construction of the bridge begins. It is therefore unlikely we will see a repeat of the Botley Road bridge replacement in Oxford, which saw the opening date pushed back by several years because of complications which arose due to the number of utilities that had to be diverted. Clearly, it will be a sensitive matter, and HS2 Limited will want to keep the local community informed about the work and will want to keep the length of the closure to a minimum. Due to the constrained nature of the bridge location, it would be next to impossible to keep the road open during construction, as, unlike in rural areas, there is no room to build a temporary road to divert traffic. I think the wider connectivity benefits and subsequent planned regeneration of the surrounding area will ultimately make the road closure worthwhile. It is also hoped that the surface station could potentially open before HS2 does, as HS2 Limited, BBVS, the DfT and Transport for London are currently exploring options to bring forward the benefits. The opening of HS2 has been delayed until between 2036 and 2039. However, construction of the surface station should be completed several years before then. It would be good therefore if residents were able to access Elizabeth Line and mainline services before then. This would also allow passengers from the South West and South Wales to more easily reach services to Heathrow, which should in part make up for the effective cancellation of the so-called Western Link. I'm sure I will keep you up to date as soon as I know more about the works affecting the Great Western Main Line or Old Oak Common Lane, so don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And please don't forget to give the video a like or even a so-called hype, as it helps my content to get noticed. And lastly, but most importantly, thank you to the team for HS2 Limited and BBVS for the invitation.